Welcome to the Beyond the Diagnosis podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kylie Burton. If you have been told that your blood work is normal, yet you feel awful, well, this is the place for you, because whether you have a diagnosis or not, I'm going to teach you how to turn those normal labs into real answers, healing, and hope. So grab your blood work. Come join me. Here we go.
Shayne is in the house.
Well, hello, everyone. And again, happy to be here. It's always a pleasure. I'm really glad that Kylie and Mike chose this, and Nicole, I'm sure, chose this topic because it is a severely underrepresented, simple analysis of health. And I can supply you guys with a ton of research that goes back to, 5,000 years ago, where by analyzing your poop, of course, that's one of our favorite topics, as well as what we call transit time. And throughout the millennia, many practitioners, healers, medicine men have completely cataloged and understood that transit time is so critical to so many aspects of health long before they understood something like microbiota or bacteria or parasites or, renal or cardiac metabolisms or just general metabolic glucose metabolism. Before they even understood all the biochemistry, long before, they were transforming people's health by just understanding how long it was taking for food to transit the body and what kind of stool they were producing. And I have to say, it's an art, but it's a science. And we've had some fun with this. So there's two aspects to what I'm going to tell you today. I'm hoping to give you guys some clinical insights regarding this process, as well as an opportunity to take what we call the Blu Poo pill and create an exciting yet really fun challenge within your own clinic and your own systems. You can even try it out on your family first, because it becomes a point of conversation when you can really break down the barrier of poop is disgusting, don't want to talk about my poop, don't want to look at my poop, and of course we're beyond that, right? We really enjoy our poop. We enjoy looking at it. I mean, we're beyond that, but a lot of our patients and a lot of your patients may not see it similarly. So we break down the barriers because there's so much story in there. So why is there story in there? Well, first of all, when you think about what happens, we first of all, we get these hormones, the leptin and ghrelin cycle that says, hey, I'm hungry and I want to eat. So you then first smell and visualize food. The first thing you do is take a bite, you chew it up, masticate it. We're now triggering a lot of neural receptors, what they call endocrine neural receptors. They line our mouth all the way down into the colon. These receptors are like taste buds throughout your GI, and they're going to monitor and manage the food as you digest it, as it transits the entire GI tract. And remember, the GI tract is segregated into a number of chambers, and it's controlled by these valves, right? The one we're most familiar with is the rectum, and that, of course, is the valve that opens, and it allows the feces to empty into the toilet. And if you're camping, into the forest, whatever. But if there are other valves, the ileocecal valve, the I just forgot the name of it, but the valve between the different chambers, and each chamber has a very unique function. So the esophagus primes, and the mouth, that particular chamber, allows you to masticate as well as condense the food down into a tubular form. There's also the release of salivary enzymes, the amylases, lipases, and then the hormones are released to tell the stomach food is coming. Now the food starts generating hydrochloric acid. So it's prepping for what's coming down the pipe. That enters the stomach. We have the stomach motion. And by the way, that movement is what we call peristalsis, or the motor migrating complexes. And so now the food has entered the stomach, and the stomach starts producing more enzymes, more acid resistant enzymes, again, proteases and amylases. It's also sensing, there are bacteria, microbiota in there. They're sensing what's going on. something like H. pylori, for example, and they're sending messages back to the brain. Okay, we've got food in the stomach. So now we start to re-migrate the bloodstream to be ready for the nutritional pickup that happens in a couple of hours in the intestine. The small intestine is where most of our nutrients are absorbed, both macro and micro, from our food as the human receives it. So that valve opens a couple hours later depending on the food. So here's what we call gastric emptying. And that's dictated by, these nerve sensors that some run from the epithelial tissue in the stomach up through the central nervous system, but also through the vagal nerve. So I'm bringing in these new dynamics of our body. When our food is in there, we're unconscious to it, but it is doing a ton of work to manage what is in the stomach. How much acids did I produce? Is it a high fiber meal? Is it a low fiber meal? Is it a carbohydrate rich meal? Is it a processed food meal? Is it protein, and so on, right? These are questions that are being asked and answered by the nerve cells that exist in your stomach. And we just don't even pay attention to it. It's sending signals to the brain. It's reporting what's going on in the stomach. Once a sufficient report comes back to the brain and through the vagal nerve, the valve is opened. Now we release that chyme into the small intestine: ileum, duodenum, luteum. So we have 3 separate chambers that absorb things differently. And they're not separated by valves, by the way. They're just along the long tube of the small intestine. However, most of that is where we absorb things, because it's, instead of being a smooth epithelial tissue like the stomach, and even smoother and less smooth than the colon, it is a highly populated by what we call villi and crypts. So you can imagine that it looks like carpet, like big shag carpet. There's all these appendages coming out of the inside of the small intestine that are now going to absorb the food. It's also where a lot of the microbes hide in the microbiome. But again, it's completely monitored by what we call neuropod cells. It's monitored by immune cells. There's cells like the parietal. There's a whole bunch of really unique and amazing cells that line the entire small intestine. Some of them are designed to pick up vitamins. Some are designed to pick up your minerals. Some are designed to pick up certain carbs like glucose, others lipids, others, and so on. So there's this really beautiful movement that happens throughout the small intestine, slowly migrating the food, the chyme, all the way down through that multiple feet of small intestine. It's not as highly populated by microbes, the microbiome, but they still exist there and they're still doing a job. By the time that food navigates that, and we'll talk about times in a minute, most of the macronutrients, or most of the nutrients that our bodies are designed to uptake from our food, most of that's happened in the small intestine. It then will go through another valve and enter the colon. And it's here where anything that we've consumed that can't be metabolized by humans, and let's just break that down simply. We're very good at metabolizing simple carbs like starch. We're very good at metabolizing protein because we have proteases and we have amylases. And we're very good at metabolizing simple sugars. These are things that we do very well at. What we don't do very well at is complex plants in a very rich diet. So all of the different colorful compounds that we see in our veggies or our fruits, all of the different fibers that exist in all the plants we eat, whether that be an herb-based fiber or just a dietary fiber from lettuce or eggplants or carrots and so on. These are things that we don't extract very well. We rely on the colonic process, which utilizes mainly the microbes in that area, to pull these things out for us. Once it's in the colon, we do a lot of what we call fermentation. We don't like to see any fermentation in the stomach. We like to see very little in the small intestine. That fermentation of all these really elegant and complex and high variety diversity of compounds happens in the colon. And the bulk of that work is done by the colonic microbiome. So that transit time then is added on, and we The food slowly moves around the colon and then ultimately out the rectum. So you can see that's such a really important process for our lives. Now, that's the positive benefit of our GI tract. Now, the downside is our GI tract is attached to the world in two places, our mouth and our rectum. So it's one part of the inside of our body that has constant exposure to the outside world. Most everything else in our body beside our lungs and is not being constantly exposed to what's around us. The air we breathe, the water, the contact we come into with animals or humans or pathogen or parasite. Our mouth it's critical that this particular part of our body is on high alert, which is why, of course, the GALT exists, which is our the gastrointestinal lymphoid tissue, and it's a huge part of our immune system. And that's because it's always being exposed. Therefore, there's this really brilliant dynamic between the gut, the vagal nerve, the immune system, and the microbiome. And so many of you have heard that story before. That's something that we've known for many years. That is both anatomically and biologically. But what's new, what's coming out new in this world is the number of unique cells in our GI tract that we're still discovering them. And we're discovering what it is they're doing in our GI tract. We don't even know all the roles that these new cells play. And what we're learning first and foremost is some of them are sending back messages to our brain through the vagal nerve or the central nervous system, telling us exactly what we're digesting, what kind of amino acid profiles, what kind of lipid profiles. It's in constant communication with our microbes, telling us what our microbes are doing. In fact, if let's say you end up you ingest a potato salad at a picnic, it's not pathogenic, but it's high in microbes. It's too many. When the cells in your intestinal tract realize that there's trillions of bacteria in that potato salad, you're going to immediately start feeling a little nauseous. You're going to question that potato salad. You may even get enough serotonin release from another group of cells in the intestine saying, this is unacceptable. We are reversing the flow of food. You run behind the nearest tree and you let it go. And it all comes rushing out of your mouth onto the ground because of the nerve cells, these pod cells in your intestine that have just censored the number of microbes in your food. It's fairly a beautiful story to help us stay alive. And you'll see animals do it. Dogs will do it. Cats will do it. I mean, this is all happening at the level of what we call enteric nerve system. And there's an endocrine enteric system as well that measures hormones. We don't have time for that today. But my point is this whole GI tract has this amazing brilliance to keep us healthy, keep us alive, and it happens to become the home of some of the most important microbes that we are associated with. So it's doing all of this amazing work. And when you make it upset, it also has tools to get food out of us when that food is toxic. Does it always work? No. We clearly don't have enough sensory nerves that would deal with man-made chemicals like pesticides, Roundup, PCBs. We're not sensing those things because those things get into us and we don't know they're even coming in. Why? Well, they're man-made. We haven't developed ways to do it. But again, that's a really phenomenal way of thinking of our gut as the entry point, which is why we want to take care of it. Now, that time that it takes to go through us isn't simply dictated by random processes. We don't just expect when I eat something, I know it's going to come out in a day or two or three or whatever, and I don't need to worry about it. It isn't something we want to passively believe is going to happen and keep us healthy. It clearly is a very orchestrated, choreographed system that when it's not working properly, we find that we have misery in our lives. We have miserable patients. We ourselves are miserable. When you've experienced severe diarrhea or severe constipation, you're a very unhappy human. And you have very unhappy microbes. In fact, so much so that when people get what we call impacted, they can be as miserable as if they were run over by a car. right? Had their legs broken or, fell off of a 2-story building. This has an impact on our ability to feel happy, to thrive, and so on. When our GI tract is unhappy, we are very unhappy people. And it goes without saying that when the GI is at this level of dysfunction, our brain starts misfiring, our cognitive declines, our immune system declines, our liver becomes overloaded with toxins because now toxins are sitting inside of us, leaching into the bloodstream. Leaky gut becomes exacerbated, and I can go on and on. Rashes start to develop, hair starts to fall out, our lungs become congested, our cardiovascular system becomes impacted. As you've heard me talk before, we have to pay attention to our gut in order to heal the rest of the body. So when it comes to transit time and stool, which is today's lesson, I wanted to give you a much more broad view of the impact and the day-to-day goings on in our gut and how we take it for granted. When we eat something, all of the different stages it goes through, all of the different things that it impacts. And oftentimes we don't appreciate the complexity and really the benefit that each stage of our gut has for us. And we don't think about it. It all happens so naturally and unabated by our thoughts, our conscious thinking, but it's doing such a phenomenal job for us. Or when it isn't, we are miserable. So what I want to do now is kind of jump into what I would consider a deeper dive into transit time and stool consistency. And then what we can do is we can circle back to, I've just described the physiology and the benefit of our GI, but how do we start to understand that from a clinical standpoint? And how do we integrate that into a simple conversation and testing with all of your clients? And it's fun, it's simple, super cost effective. And yet the output for that is every bit as valuable as other tools that we use in the clinic. Knowing transit time and stool consistency over a period of time can be super informative for all of us. And that's part of why. So I'm really excited. Needless to say, I'm really excited that we had this topic, because it's not that I love talking about poo, although I do. It's so much a part of our health, and it's an underrepresented situation.
And a quick question, when will Blu Poo be available?
It's available.
It's available?
In
Can
fact,
we find it on your website?
While we're doing that, let me show you. If it's not there, I asked the IT people to put it there. Okay, so
That's fun.
you have a bill like this, and the documents inside, let's go through this a little bit, because since we're talking about it, this is a 1-month supply per person. I like to do 1 session a week, and here's why. I used to do more, and what happens is people took the second round of Blu Poo before they pooped the first time poo. Blue, geez, that's like a tongue twister. Because we expect everybody to be in this kind of normal range, and we've done a bunch of challenges in my circles, and I found that it's shocking to see how many people are not within a healthy range, meaning that they say, oh, it's been 4 days. And I took the second Blu Poo yesterday. I'm thinking, no, that's unacceptable. So this is each sachet or each little package. Now in the future, we plan on including this, we can include this type of packaging, we're going to upgrade it a little into kits or systems or protocols, etc. And depending on how long you want this to be done, for example, I've done people this is a month's worth, because you do 2 pills per week or 2 pills and then you wait until it comes out. You want to start the clock. Don't forget to start the clock when you take the pills. And there's little experiments people have done, like, do I take it with food? Do I take it without food? We've done both. And the transit time doesn't change a terrible much unless someone's fasting or someone's going from a carb diet to a keto. That can alter it. But these are ways that that doesn't mean you don't get valid data. You get great data from doing that, because now when they are moving out of keto or into a vegetarian or et cetera, you start to catalog and document these transit time changes, because it's absolutely changing their biome and changing their motor migrating complex and their ability to uptake nutrients, etc. And there's a lot of correlative data there that exists, but as a clinician, as a patient, this data is really sparse and lacking because it's super powerful, but no one's really done the work. There's actually a publication that came out last year where they gave a group of people a blue dye. And I'm not really keen on that. We use blue chlorophyll, so blue spirulina, and indigo blue, which are both healthy for the gut. So we're not having that problem of just a blue dye. But the people doing the research said this is incredible what we're learning, and I would concur that this is incredible. So that's how it's available. And I guess if we get enough demand, or you find that you want to give more and more patients Blu Poo pills as opposed to just having more and more of these around the office, we could ultimately bottle this for you guys, under the Alimentum label, and also sell a larger amount. If you're really going through it in a challenge or in your clinic, there's a number of ways we could do it for you that could be beneficial, of course. But this is a month-to-month packet, and over the course of a month, you learn quite a bit. Over 4 weeks, you're going to learn quite a bit. And what is the first thing we learn? Well, I couldn't color the poop on this schematic blue. I did try. It's just weird. However, it does tell us something. So this Bristol stool's been around, the scale's been around a while. And again, as I mentioned, many practitioners over the last few hundred years have really understood that poo tells us a story about our lives. And we go from type 1, which is separate hard lumps, right? This is like the rabbit pellets or the deer pellets you might see in the forest. They don't hurt as much coming out because they're smaller, but you get all these separate little pellets coming out, these separate little bundles. This is what we call type 1. It's highly dehydrated. It's been in the small intestine and the colon for a very long time. And of course, it could even be, we know it's lacking water, but it also has a much more diverse set of bad bugs. And we'll get into that in a minute. The second one is what we call type 2. It's a really hard sausage. It almost looks like these pellets kind of being mushed together. So it's slightly more hydrated. We haven't lost as much water in the colon, being reabsorbed. And recall, as you're reabsorbing water, you're bringing a lot of other things back into the bloodstream through the portal vein that we don't want there. The longer a stool sits in the colon, we're reintroducing all the toxins that we're trying to get rid of. And in the case of women, oftentimes you're reintroducing a lot of the hormones that you're trying to get rid of during your cycles. When you have constipation, you're reabsorbing a lot of these, especially after microbial transformations that can create a lot of the estrogen dominance that's related to PCOS, as well as the diabetic issues that a lot of people have. That's type 2. That one can actually really hurt coming out because it's slightly larger, it's hard, it's not smooth, and it really can. These are the ones that people say, that was so painful. This is not to gross any of you out, which I doubt I am, but these are the ones when a person says, my bowel movements are incredibly painful. This is the one you're looking at. The type 3, less painful, a little more narrow, a little longer. Again, it's more of an aggregate of these pellet-like things. So we know, again, we're dehydrated. We're still reabsorbing what we're trying to get rid of, a lot of the toxins. Often the microbes, keep in mind, you guys, the consistency or the composition of stool, there is the matter that nothing digests, right? There's some of these fibers, like cellulose, plant fibers, that do not become part of our digestible fibers that make it themselves, but they make it all the way through, right? Cellulose is a good one. We as humans don't digest cellulose. So when we eat plants, some of that cellulose makes it all the way through, but a big chunk of what is made up of feces is the microbes that we're trying to get rid of. We want to slough off microbes from the stomach, well, actually from the mouth all the way to the rectum. We want these microbes to be leaving us, because if they don't, they start to overgrow us. And many of you guys are familiar with the terms SIBO, SIFO, IBS, IBD, these are times where microbes are overgrowing their environment. They're encroaching on environments they don't need to be in. SIBO, that one's very common, and we have protocols for that, where that's the organisms overgrowing into the small intestine, creating a big problem. We want these things to slough off and become part of our stool. In fact, at least 50% of the mass of what you're looking at here should be microbes that your body is getting rid of. And the other reason that's important is because microbes reproduce every 30 minutes. So if you have 1 trillion microbes, in 30 minutes, you have 2 trillion microbes. So we want these guys to be leaving our body frequently so that the fresh ones are staying and the old guys are leaving every single day. Otherwise, they would just overgrow us. Leave a vegetable or something out on the counter and see what happens when the microbes overgrow it, right? It just becomes consumed by microbes. We don't want that. Type 4, now we're getting more hydration, a little more in the normal range of what we like to see. It's softer, it's a little more sausage-like, but this is falling in the range of a little more beneficial. So from the bottom edge of type 3 to the top edge of type 5, this is the normal range. And so ideally on this particular graphic, type 4 would be where we'd shoot. It's more of a banana consistency. It's smooth and soft. It holds its shape. And it's got enough moisture, which means it's hanging onto the microbes. It's hanging onto the waste products, the toxins that we're releasing from our cells, as well as ones we might be trying to get out of our body. The metabolic toxins and metabolic waste is all headed down the pipe here. All of the, as our bile is released in our gallbladder, it's all being absorbed by this guy and not being reabsorbed in the colon. And then as we move down, not to hit each one too slowly, 5, 6, and 7, we're finding that we become more and more laden by too much moisture, which means water is being pumped into the colon to compensate for issues with the colonic cells, for example, like leaky gut, issues with the nutrients, the type of foods we're eating a lot of. So if we had slightly more digestible fibers, it helps maintain consistency. If we're eating nothing but simple carbs, processed foods, we get too soft. Water's being pumped from the blood or the plasma into the colon to keep some of the electrolyte levels balanced, as well as the pH. So we're running water the opposite direction too much, and we're creating diarrhea. It also would mean that we have certain inflammatory problems in our bowels, because it's also saying we need to get this material out of the body rapidly. So not only is it indicative, I would say it's very much conclusive that once you start moving down this spectrum to diarrhea, your body is recognizing through all that sensory system I talked about earlier, the nerve cells, the hormone cells that are lining our intestines. They're saying, we don't like what's in this stool. We need to get it out, and we need to get it out fast. So as you go down to 5, 6, and 7, you're running to the toilet. You may or may not make it. You may be doing laundry that night to clean this up, but this is the trajectory. Now, these are the stool types, and we can fluctuate. Hormones, microbiota composition will affect these, and I'll get into that in a second for the microbes, but just from a food and a hormone perspective, all the women on the menstruous on out and even into menopause, they've experienced how hormones, as they fluctuate, can alter the consistency of stools throughout the month. So we can navigate that. We can control that by altering our diet throughout the month. There's times a month that we need slightly more carbs, it's complex carbs with simple carbs, to maintain hormonal balances. When we look at how it can fluctuate for women monthly, for people that are dealing with obesity, diabetes, every one of these conditions, heart conditions, renal, infections, I can't go without saying, even from a parasitic, fungal, or microbial, as we all know, these all impact our stool. So even a low-lying, a subacute infection, we maybe not have a fever, we maybe don't have any visible inflammation, but we seem to be in a diarrhea state, right? Our stool is we're either on one of these two scales. We're highly constipated or we're highly liquefied. These are a sign. These are a sign that something else is going on. Even if you were to talk to me, or I were to talk to you and say, okay, what other symptoms do you have? And you tell me nothing noticeable, but you have diarrhea or you're incredibly constipated and your stool didn't come out for 5 days. Okay, this is a sign of an issue that we need to address. It might take us a minute because we don't have other tests to go off of, but we do, right? We can implement new testing or other things you have in your toolbox to really tease into this, because oftentimes our bowels might be the first system we have to raise the red flag on either end of this spectrum. So just keep that in mind, that looking at the stool is very telling when other things are maybe not so obvious. Someone that has chronic diarrhea, even though they feel good, they're eating, they're still putting 3 meals a day into them. We want to ask, what are those meals? What is the composition? How much are you incorporating really wonderful prebiotics? How much are you incorporating a decent amount of protein? No matter the source, just good amounts of protein, whether they're vegetarian, vegan, or carnivore, etc. That's fine. We can still navigate through this. Once we analyze what's going on and they have, a week-long diarrhea, we have to seriously interpret this stool and say, we've got a real problem. And if it continues, as we all know, especially for little people, diarrhea for more than 24 hours to 48 hours, that starts creating a dehydration risk. And now you're starving all of your cells of water, and it's a serious problem if you're not getting super hydrated. I mean, first thing you tell people with diarrhea, you drink a ton of water. Well, won't that make my stool more watery? No, it doesn't. There is a mechanism that controls that. We need to get to the underlying problem, which could be an infectious agent. It could be some sort of food sensitivity. It could be some toxin. We have to break it down. And here today, I'm just telling you to use that diagnostic brain of yours, because it can come from, it's a funnel. We have to funnel that in, and we could use any one of the number of diagnostic tools.
Hey, if you're new here, welcome aboard. If you're coming back, welcome back. I'm coming back as well. In fact, we're going to have new episodes every Wednesday right here on the Beyond the Diagnosis podcast. If you love what you just listened to and love what you've been listening to, I would be honored to have you leave a review. Leave it on the place where you listen to your podcast, so that way more people can find this podcast and get answers from their blood work as well. I'm Dr. Kylie, and I'll see you next week.